Right, we're joined now by Ambassador Jerry Ugokwe, former Nigerian ambassador to Austria and Slovakia. He's also the former permanent representative to United Nations offices in Vienna. Also with us is Arise analyst Anthony Kila, professor of strategy and development at the Institute, director at the Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies. Thank you both of you gentlemen for joining us on Newsnight tonight. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Jerry Ugokwe. 5 days into this administration's life, what's your assessment of what's been going on since Monday that President Tinubu was inaugurated?
Well, thank you so very much for having me. Well, since this is the first time of my coming here since the inauguration of the president, let me use this singular opportunity to congratulate President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on his inauguration. As you're well aware, with what the naysayers were saying, you wouldn't think we'll be here today. In the first place, it was like the inauguration may never have taken place, and even if it did, that Nigeria will be on fire. Thank God for the resilience of Nigerians, and so we're here today. I would say that just like he said, he will not disappoint Nigerians. He said it clearly, in his address, that he will not disappoint Nigeria, and he has started doing so by first of all summoning the defense chiefs to come and begin on one of the most important issues in Nigeria, which is security. As you know, without security, nothing would even work, because even if you say, oh, I'm going to be farming, they come to your farms and disturb you, kill people and all that. So he started first with security. And you saw what the security chief said, that he told them to hit the ground running, to just go ahead and crush insecurity, if you will. So I think it's, he has started well. And then he has started...
In spite of the fuel debacle?
Yeah, whenever you talk about the fuel issue, if you studied very deeply what has happened, we have a bill called the PIA, Petroleum Industry Act. That act clearly says that 6 months after the act took effect, that subsidy would go. Actually, that subsidy would have gone in February if you studied that bill. By February, subsidy would have gone. But the administration of Buhari, continued to provide for the subsidy. And so when he took over, being aware of that PIA bill has said, and also that from June, end of June, there won't be any money in the budget, for subsidy. And he now said the subsidy is gone. I think that was the right thing to do. However, the people we ought to be blaming are the marketers, people who bought fuel, for say $100 naira per liter, and now they are selling it for 570 something naira a liter.
Right,
they should be the people who should bear the brunt.
Just allow me to jump in there so I can quickly bring in Professor Kila. Professor Kila, good to see you. And again, I know you've spoken about, people that should have capacity for national development. Speak to us on what you expect to see, let's be gender friendly, about the president's men and women in the days ahead.
I thought you were going to fall into gender trap.
Not with me.
No, you did it. Well, I think, everybody talks about putting the round pegs in the round hole. I think that's a repeated tautology that we've heard all the time. It's a kind of platitude. Everybody wants that. If we break it down to, strategic details of what we should expect from the new administration, I think we should expect a couple of things, One is good governance defined really by safety, stability, and prosperity. The other is creation of a legacy, defined by innovative and groundbreaking deeds. To do that, the president needs to find a group of people that understand and share this kind of vision, and then make sure that when they come in, they know what he wants to achieve, and they're coming in with their ability to make his objective possible. So let's look at it in terms of method before we go in terms of the right kind of people. I start from method because eventually whoever gets the position of cabinet or any role is the responsibility of his president. So whether they're going to force on him based on political affiliation, based on religious or ethnical affiliation, ultimately the responsibility is going to be for the president. You know, let's hope we don't have the kind of thing we had in the last 8 years where people will blame everybody except the president. This time, I'll advise citizens to start looking directly at the president for whatever happens. So, for example, when the president takes the eventual nominees to the chambers for approval, he's not required to affix a portfolio to them. I would argue that if the president wants to leave a legacy, one of the things he can do is, as long as the Constitution does not prohibit him from doing that, to go to the House with portfolios attached. And I'll tell you why that would be good. One, he'll be the first person to do it in history. And two, he will go there knowing that the people coming to occupy his cabinet have a clear vision and a kind of manifesto for their ministry and portfolio. So they're not going to go there finding out what the ministry does. There's a story of a minister in this country who said he didn't know what his ministry was about when he got his position. Let us, with this new administration, put people in charge of cabinets that they themselves have a plan of what they want to do. So, for example, I believe that if I were going to choose a minister for the president, or I was going to be his minister, say let's start from letter A for aviation. The person who wants to be minister for aviation should come up with a plan to say that the 3 or 4 things I want to achieve under my tenure should be safety of flights, punctuality and reliability of flights, availability of flights, and maybe a vibrant airport sector. So you have a clear agenda of what you want to do. Then perhaps you come with a 36, 40 weeks plan of how to achieve that thing. And the president knows that, yes, this your vision is what aligns with my vision. I'm president because, you know, I got the vote. I'm giving you the job. That way, when you talk about hit the ground running, then you can really achieve that because you're bringing in people who are coming with a plan. And of course, for you to have a plan, you would have studied the sector. So we have a very realistic, timed, if possible, programmed, not hope, but trajectory to look at. That will be what I'll be looking at.
All right, Prof, let me come in here. Ambassador Ugokwe. Bishop Matthew Kuka made a statement today. Let me quote him, not necessarily verbatim, but he told Tinubu to make appointments that are focused on unifying the entire nation. From the appointments so far that you've seen, Femi Gbajabiamila, Chief of Staff, of course, George Akume, former Governor of Benue State, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, of course, the Deputy Chief of Staff, has also been picked in the person of Hadejia. Yeah. From your assessment, would it be too early to expect, reflection of federal character, for example, something to reflect the present mindset of Nigerians where nobody wants to have a sense of being left out? What's your, take on this?
Well, let me first say that I agree with Kila completely. Those of us who have served in the National Assembly, we have continued to say, in fact, at some point we have, some of us have proposed it in the constitutional amendment, that President submitting the list of members of his cabinet, it must come with their portfolios. Right. This is what is done everywhere in the world. It is only in our country that people will submit a list. You don't know whether the lawyer is going to be Minister of Health. You don't know whether the doctor is going to be the Attorney General. So those kinds of things. We ought to, I believe that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he served as a senator himself also, that he should know that this is very critical, in actually putting the square pegs in the square holes. That is very critical. Now, about the appointments that he has made so far. As you know, first of all, the chief of staff to the president, I think he made the right choice. I served in the National Assembly, in the Fifth Assembly with Femi Gbajabiamila, and Femi is the current Speaker of the House of Representatives, and since Femi became Speaker, there had not been issue of impeachment. In our days, almost every 2 weeks, there's an impeachment or attempted impeachment, and Femi has been able to manage the House, which means he has the capacity. Now, for a president to choose his chief of staff is somebody who will understand the body language of the president, because one, he is at the meeting, at every meeting the president is, involved in. So he's somebody that when the president winks, he knows exactly what the president wants to do. So I think Femi squarely fits, that role. Now, remember also, in appointing the secretary to the government of the Federation, the North Central have been agitating that it is important that they are included, in the appointments that will be coming up, particularly significant appointments have been delivered, to the APC. Now, also remember that the issue of Christian, Muslim had dominated, the space for quite some time. So in making a choice of who becomes the secretary to the government, you can see one, he went to the North Central, who had been agitating, and of course, Benue State, that delivered out of, a PDP, Benue is now an APC. Due to, the effort put in, by people, like George Akume. And also, that George Akume is a very seasoned politician. He is equal to the task. So I think he had a good choice. Again, going further, I think that in the next appointment, you would expect that other zones will, naturally, come into play, like the Southeast where I come from. I expect, because there have been a lot of agitations also, from the Southeast, that one, because the Southeast didn't quite deliver to APC, but Southeast is part of Nigeria. Southeast is a very critical part of Nigeria. So I expect that in the next few days, when His Excellency the President is going to be making his announcement of the other positions that will be coming, to remember that a place like Southeast needs to be brought to the center of what is going on in Abuja.
Professor Kila, I was meant to ask this question, of Ugokwe, but let me start off by asking you, and people expect to see President Tinubu break away from the norm, and the 10th Assembly as well break away from the norm. So the whole talk of not first bringing the ministers with the portfolios, as well as the National Assembly always with the culture of taking a bow and go, has actually not done the nation any good. So are we likely to see a departure from that ugly norm?
Well, you've used a key word there. You talk of hope. The reason why you hope something new happens is that what has happened so far is bad. So one moves away from it. It's a pity the National Assembly did not explain themselves well, because in reality, the culture of taking a bow, which looks ridiculous, is not as bad as it seems if one understands the technicalities involved. The reason why one is allowed to take a bow is that it is assumed that this person is known, very well known to us, so there's no need to ask him a question. That's where that tradition comes from, because if you're a member of the House, or if you are somebody who have held positions before, it is assumed that we already know your history and we know your capacity, we know you. So you don't really need to tell us much. That is where it comes from. But I think the new assembly needs to explain that very well and to take it seriously. But I remember, in the last assembly, there was a minister, I'm not going to mention names here because it's done now, when somebody, turned it to a joke to say, if we ask you to stay, you might tell us another lie. So take a bow. Such ridiculous positions should not be done in a very sober and high-level engagement. But the National Assembly should explain very well if they want to take a bow. I think the senator, the Ekiti senator, Bamidele, Okpeyemi Bamidele, tried to explain that concept about 7 years ago. So I think they should stop that. But I think the portfolio thing helps so that the interrogation and the conversation is neither shallow, vague, or excessively general. So you can actually ask somebody what they're going to do in that part. The question about the federal character and the representation, let me take an unpopular position there, that it's a given that most part of the country will be represented, but let me remind citizens to be wary of these things, because the fact that somebody from my region becomes minister or something, as a citizen, it doesn't automatically translate in anything for me personally, unless I am directly connected to that person. This is a country of over 102 million people. The fact that we have to have a conversation about representation of ethnic group, about religion, is not an advantage. It is an index, a spy of how frail the nation called Nigeria is. It shows that we don't trust ourselves. We should be talking about pure competence. The dream of the founding fathers of Nigeria will never come to be until the day when ministers are nominated and we don't care about what part of the country they come from.
Indeed, I mean, totally. Ambassador, I'm sure you want to.
Yes, I just wanted to add a few things as to what he talked about when we were talking about portfolios and things like that.
Yes.
I think it's also important for me to say this, because the National Assembly, i.e. the Senate, when it is time to screen, if you will, the ministerial nominees, we have continued to crusade this fact that it is wrong for members of the Senate to screen people on the floor of the Senate. I have the opportunity of having gone through, to so many state national assemblies, across the world. What the Senate needs to do is to create a committee, a screening committee, that will go to the committee rooms, spend time, quality time, and screen members nominated by the president. This idea of coming to the floor and taking a bow does not do any good to us. This idea of coming to the House and asking questions, and the Senate, the nominees are talking to the senators as if they are talking to his students in the class, does not work anywhere. They ought to have a situation where they will be able to interview or screen those who have been nominated for, even if it means for a period of 2 weeks, so that we know what they can do. And at the end of the day, the committee will come to the floor of the Senate and make a presentation. And it's at the end of that presentation that the Senate will decide whether these nominees are capable of doing those jobs. And also, it is important that I believe that Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu will, take the leadership in assigning roles to these portfolios, if you will, to his nominees. And this will be, will do a lot of good, for us to know who is coming to do what.
Absolutely. Yes. Very quickly, in 30 seconds if you can, the issue of costs of governance and the size of government. Is it something that you would expect that this president will take a very serious and critical look at? What does he need to do, especially considering the dire straits that Nigeria finds herself? Ambassador.
There are so many things that the president can do. I remember while I was working for the U.S. government, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, for example, had only 2 cars. He had the car that has his security men and his own car. But this is the only country, in our own situation, someone like a governor will have 20 cars on the convoy. The president will have 50 cars on the convoy. The Senate president will have. So those are clear areas where we can cut down. You know, in a convoy of, say, the Speaker of House, the Senate president, you don't need more than 3 cars. Maybe the one that is leading where he is and some security, you know, at the back. Those are areas where you can, you know, cut down on spending. There are so many other areas, you know, like that, you know, that we can cut spending. You know, I think we'll find time to spend so that we can do it one after the other and show you. You know,
fantastic.
There are so many. We need to cut costs, and I believe that Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu is determined, because he says he will not rule Nigeria, that he will govern on our behalf, which means he will be a servant of the people.
So it's a fine place for us to say many thanks for being such nice company, Ambassador Ugokwe and Professor Kila. Many thanks, gentlemen.